Alright guys, we're going to do something a little bit different today. A trailer for a little known movie called Star Wars Episode 9 just dropped, and we all...
By indie filmmaker J.J. Abrams.
and we all agreed to see it together. We said, you know what, let's watch this all together. So none of us have seen anything. I think we've read some stuff like
I accidentally came across a couple of Reddit threads.
if you use
away from
the internet or if you use YouTube as much as I do, as much as people who do videos like this do, you're gonna run into something, some sort of video that has a spoiler thumbnail like, hey, look at that, like, no. So we've got a little bit of that. There's some information there, but we haven't seen any video footage.
But we have no idea what's.
Yeah. None of us have actually watched the trailer.
I don't know if there's any dialogue in this. I don't know anything. So yeah. Did you want to talk a little bit about the sequel trilogy before we get started? Like, what you guys think? I mean,
just give a rough standpoint of where we stand.
I mean, I remember being a kid watching the old Star Wars movies on VHS, and those movies have always had a really special place in my heart. And when the prequels first came out, I don't think I watched. No, I think I did. I watched Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith all in theaters. Revenge of the Sith was my first midnight movie experience.
And I remember when Dad set up like the projection at home
right.
so that we could get like the theater experience at home.
We watched it for Attack of the Clones.
That was so cool. I remember being like afraid of the nightmares when I was a kid. And I remember, I don't know if you, I've wanted to talk to you.
Oh yeah, the nightmares.
Do you remember the show? Do you remember the
television thing?
Do you remember the showdown between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Dooku, like in the beginning of that movie?
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember like feeling like ooh, they're facing down again? They lost the first time because having seen Attack of the Clones on DVD like so many times, like that was a cool moment. There's lots of cool moments like that when you're a kid.
And what's neat is that these movies, we've all kind of grown up on them. Like I definitely grew up on the old movies, and I would say that you especially grew up on the prequels. Or maybe you.
I think
I'd say I'm
you
more
two actually have a lot more prequel knowledge because they were like the hot topic when you were still kids.
Right.
I kind of grew up more on the originals. I watched the OT a lot more when I was a kid rather than the prequels.
Right.
For me, the prequels were more boring because they were focusing on politics and stuff. But I mainly stuck with the OT, and I love the OT. And I watched Force Awakens in theaters, just like all of us, and it was an epic theater experience. Same with The Last Jedi, and both times I came out really happy with the film. And then the quality of the films started to be questioned on YouTube, and I started looking more into it. I was like, wait a minute, no, these films maybe aren't as good as I thought before, and I started really assessing it for myself and realizing there are a lot of problems. But I still really like The Force Awakens, and definitely not so much in The Last Jedi. I definitely dislike that, but I still really like Force Awakens, and I have hope for the sequel trilogy, but in all honesty, it's not looking very, very hopeful.
I think we're in the middle of an interesting experiment in that Star Wars, for the first time, has changed hands. Like with the old Star Trek show, it used to be run by Gene Roddenberry. He was the godfather of Star Trek. And then there was a point where it was handed over, and there was a new show, Star Trek The Next Generation, which kind of
I've heard is actually very good.
Changed the show. It was the same world, but it was a different kind of show because it was being run by someone else. Now this is a world that's being run on a production standpoint by Kathleen Kennedy and by a different company, Disney. And we're getting an experiment in that Star Wars is being released on a yearly basis. There are these side stories. Like for me, my favorite of the new Star Wars movies has probably been Rogue One. That's the one I've watched the most. That's the one that feels the most like Star Wars to me. I've honestly only seen both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi in theaters. I saw The Force Awakens on midnight showing, and then I saw it the next day. And it wasn't that I disliked the movie, I quite liked it. But I didn't feel the need to go revisit it, and it was the same with The Last Jedi. I watched it in theaters opening night, and I haven't seen it since.
I've seen it a few times. But...
So I think that the strange thing about the new Star Wars movies is there's more of them, but they haven't made the lasting impact that the other movies have, or necessarily engendered a feeling of anticipation for me. Like with this trailer, I honestly only knew about it because Gavin, you I think texted me and said, "Don't watch the trailer. We want to do a reaction." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's May. It's May the 4th."
I'd been waiting for it's April.
Oh, then why was Star Wars Celebration this month?
It's just
Isn't it usually in May?
No, I think it usually is in April. It's usually later on.
I think May the 4th is just the snappy holiday.
Star Wars tricked me into thinking it was a month from now.
Sorry, Ro, you're on the wrong month. Yeah, so like I think we can all agree that the OT are solid films. They have flaws. I think we could agree, but like
they stand the test of time.
Yeah, the prequels have dated. The CGI's dated. The dialogue is pretty clunky and like the story is not perfect. But and these new films, I think like they have world building issues and like they have trouble with consistency. They don't quite know what they want to be.
I really feel bad for JJ. He's gonna have to get this series back on track with The Last Jedi and try and complete whatever end goal he had in mind.
He's got
his midpoint being taken out.
He has a really big problem that he's run into. It's that a lot of people really, really like the Star Wars The Last Jedi. There's people who think it's the best Star Wars film, and then there's people who hate it and think it utterly destroyed it. So he is not going to make everyone happy. People who love The Last Jedi are going to want to see that vision continued, and people who love the OT are going to want to return to the old. So like, what's he going to do? He's probably going to do whatever feels best to him. He's not going to make people happy, and to all the people who hate Star Wars The Last Jedi, we who don't like it can be like, well, it subverted your expectations.
It kind of feels like there were like two standalone movies. Like one movie that was setting up a trilogy, one movie that felt like a standalone movie in the second place, and now this movie is, as a trilogy, meant to conclude a trilogy, but it's going to be difficult because...
And it's odd. Like
there's two very different movies that preceded it.
That's why the jump in tone.
They feel like standalone movies, and yet they're sequels. So they're going to have to try to wrap this all up in some cohesive trilogy right here. This is their last effort right here. So
the trouble that I have, this is pretty much going to be the last straw. Like if this movie's bad, if like people really don't like it, and like and you don't have maybe as many strong defenders of it as you did as The Last Jedi, then it's probably the last straw. Like, I mean, you got The Mandalorian. That's pretty much the only thing left that's going to hold this thing up. And
I never like betting against billion-dollar companies.
I don't want to bet against them, but I just like it.
Well, here's the thing: those billion-dollar companies get money from the audience.
It's not working right now.
Solo
There will likely be a course correction, but I don't think it's going to like break.
It's not going to break Star Wars, but I agree. They'll need to get more serious about it. I think even this, I don't think that they were as serious. I think they're just like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm like, I don't think it's kind of like...
And considering how some of the...
It's kind of like with Justice League. Like after Dawn of Justice had come out and everyone was like, hey, maybe Justice League... They're like, no, they didn't have enough time to learn their lessons. You saw that in Wonder Woman, because clearly they gave it to a director who knew what she was doing. She gave it in her own vision. They learned lessons from Batman v Superman. And like, I'm not going to see this in here. I doubt it. Like, I think... They need to learn what the fans want and how to make a good vision for their story. And I
don't think it's even necessarily that. I think it's an issue of they have to learn what is going to work overall. Like, the fans of Star Wars are a small, little bitty bit of the audience they're trying to reach. And I think that what they're probably gonna do is what DC is kind of slowly doing. DC is sort of slowly but surely completely changed the direction of their movies without even really having a movie that says, hey, by the way, this is a complete change in tone and direction of the movies.
Except for Justice League.
Well, no, Justice League I think was the last movie in the old way, but with Wonder Woman, with Aquaman,
except they changed the sky red and made everyone tell clunky jokes.
No, I'm saying like Justice League was kind of like the last bit of that. Now their movies are very much shifting in the way. My guess is that if Star Wars is going to adapt, it will be in that way. Slow, deliberate change that will eventually hone in, okay, the audience likes this, let's go this way. So they're learning, and I think that's my ultimate hope with this movie and any future Star Wars movies is they're going to hone in on not what the Star Wars fans want, because they don't care. There's no reason for them to care. It's a small minority of the population they're really trying to target.
Who are they trying to target if not the fans?
Everyone. Star Wars is a movie that everyone, regardless of your age, your gender, your demographic, everyone loves Star Wars. They want to get in the widest audiences possible.
I don't think it's regardless of age.
That's like the Marvel movies. The Marvel movies respect the fans and respect the source material, but their target is not to please the fans. Their target is to please the widest audience possible.
Marvel movies
and they balance that well.
I think Marvel movies have always had the goal of just making quality movies, not
that's my point.
For a certain audience.
The point is they're trying to make the best movie possible, but sometimes you're going to stumble your way to victory sometimes. Like The Last Jedi is made by a really good filmmaker. He's written by a really good filmmaker. And it maybe didn't work out the way that drew in and made the audience like it as much as they wanted it to be.
I swear, I've never spoken out about Rian Johnson. I've watched all of his films. I've watched all of his episodes of Breaking Bad, and I'm like, he's a talented director. And I see the direction inside of The Last Jedi. I think it's significantly better directed than The Force Awakens. It's like, it stands out more, but the script, man, it feels rushed, it feels lacking, and I don't know. So
we're talking too much.
We're talking way too much. Let's get into this. So yeah, my biggest trouble with Star Wars Episode 9 is that it ended. It literally did end. The story ended with Broom Boy. It ended with him looking off into the sunset, and you're like, that is the final vision for the trilogy. Rian Johnson wanted to end his trilogy. He ended it, and
It feels like a final note rather than a setup to the final story.
Yeah, because he wasn't willing to be patient, and there's so many payoffs in every single one of these movies, like Rey beating Kylo. I've said this. They needed to be more patient. They needed to drag things out more, take their time, and
they needed to have an end goal. Every character needed to have an end point, and it didn't seem like there was one. The Force Awakens set it up so there was. Like Rey had a journey, Kylo had a journey, Finn had a journey. Like, they set up the journeys for each character, but The Last Jedi, unintentionally, I think, undercut them and made it so that those journeys really didn't have a next step forward that seemed obvious. Where you're talking about that, like, holy cow, Finn's going to go do this, and Rey is going to discover this, and Kylo's going to end up here. Like, you're instead of wondering about where a character's going to end up, you start wondering more about where the story's going to be. And I think that's always less interesting than where a character is going to be.
Exactly. Yeah. So. Alright, this trailer is #1 on trending, just behind Magic Star's Concealing and Settling Power reveal by Jeffree Star, commenters, and BVS, and a lot of really bizarre YouTubers. This is like, I follow the film criticism track. This is why I don't meme. Okay, here we are. This is the trailer to Star Wars Episode 9.
Took us a while to get here, but...
Starting in 3, 2, 1.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight.
Were they on Endor at the end? Was that a bit of the Death Star?
It looked like a bit of the Death Star.
The second Death Star.
Either the second or the first, but...
I had no idea. I didn't think they filmed anything for Carrie Fisher.
They claim not. I guarantee that CGI'd in. I'm sorry. They like... They said like this is not gonna do anything. This is all used footage. I'm like, nope. She's in the costume. She wasn't live. I don't know what they're gonna do with that. That's bizarre.
Wanna watch it again?
If you want to like pause frame this thing, you can like just put it on mute. So
yeah, that opening bit with the Sergio
I'm
Leone shots.
sorry.
That's pretty sweet.
They had said that might be a possibility.
What?
Oh, no.
What are you talking about?
That she would be doing force flips in the effing air. Oh no!
Oh my goodness!
Okay, so those
are
are
extremely pessimistic.
Okay.
So those are Kylo's gloves. Well, she
Yeah.
hasn't. She needs to train. Okay, she mended.
Well, at least she's training.
She meant-
like that's a first.
So
So
she mended-
here's the interesting thing: that lightsaber was destroyed in the last movie.
She mended.
Yeah,
it.
that's
She did.
it.
So she mended it.
I guess, or rebuilt it. I guess, like
Which has never been a thing. Remember Anakin's
Look at that.
lightsaber?
Okay,
like
so
well,
it's-
look at it.
so the
It
hilt's
looks
black.
smaller. It looks smaller than the last one. So my guess is it's
No,
rebuilt.
the lightsaber's.
No, that hilt is way shorter. But look, it's like
It's
isn't
like
that
this
like
part's been cut out.
Yeah, it looks significantly shorter. Like you cut out this bit.
So
and like
it's been mended.
So
no,
like,
look at how high she holds the grip. It's like it's about it's black. I'm guessing that's where she mended it.
okay,
up.
maybe I guess.
Right. Why
She
does
still has Han's gun.
Why
by the
does
way.
she hold it right here?
It's a huge
This is the most
nitpick, Gavin.
stupid thing.
Whatever. Okay, so
Like look at that. She's having a
she's
Western
flipping-
showdown with a
she's-
TIE fighter.
she's
That's
flipping in
sweet.
the air. It's Kylo's TIE fighter, by the way. You can see with that.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
What we're left to assume is that she taught herself, and like this, it's the same. It's the same thing in Return of the Jedi, where like he goes there, you're like, what? This guy probably just got experience. He trained with Yoda a bit, but I'm like, the training for me with the last movie wasn't really enough because she didn't really train at all, and like that's my trouble when she beats like all those guards. It's like, she's doing flips in the air now, and I'm
We
like,
hear Luke in the background, and he said that he's passed on everything he knew. So I guess we're getting.
that could be it. Yeah.
I guess we're getting some training with Ghost Luke, which I guess is fine. We finally have some training, and you know. Some...
I'll be honest. For me, the lack of training has never been an issue with these movies because I think that they've at least established enough that Rey is just talented, just extremely just like she's.
They've clearly established that.
Triple kill!
I like this!
It's like she's a prodigy rather than someone that has had to learn it the hard way. Like she's naturally skilled and she's able to learn things quickly.
Alright.
So for me, that doesn't bug me as much because I see her as more like even in that last fight with
the guard.
with Kylo in the first movie, like she's not necessarily skilled. She's just powerful. She doesn't have a lot of finesse. Like she's kind of slashing at him, and in the end, like she manages to beat him down and take a chunk of his face off. So for me, that's generally how I look at something like this. It's not a lack of training. It's not like, well, how can you do that? It's like she's skilled. Good for her.
I understand how you dislike the term Mary Sue. I don't like it either, but like that first.
It's a bad term. It's not a real term. It's used by it's used in a fan fiction context, and it's used in bad faith when actually analyzing a character and whether they're a good character.
I think the reason people use it is because these feel like fan fictions, and I partially agree, but I do think that the writing is significantly better. My trouble with Rey is that like she needs to go through some form of trial, man. That's the trouble. Like that whole Force. When she grabs the lightsaber out of the stone, I remember seeing that in theater. I was like, oh, and like the thing with that is, I'm like, that's fine if that was lightning in a bottle. Like you see the look on her face. She's like, it's like she did not understand, and that's fine. But when you make it so that she beats Kylo and she beats everyone who comes into contact, and that she never runs into a single obstacle where she seems even remotely daunted, that's my trouble. And that's what it is with her doing flips in the air, man. I'm like, I'm sorry. I know this is supposed to be like the crescendo of the series where everything's fine, but man, someone needed to frickin' like cut her leg off or like do something that hurt her, because you cannot have a hero who goes through an entire trilogy and is just flipping over TIE fighters.
Well, I think that is where I disagree. I don't think that the character has to, like, even in a Star Wars movie, you don't have to lose a limb in order for that to be considered.
You don't have to
hero.
lose a
In order
limb.
for character
I was
development to
being
happen.
metaphorical.
You don't have to lose a limb. You have
for
to have
me,
a trial.
this
though.
is
You have
what
to
I
have
think
somewhere
about.
to overcome.
a character like Aragorn is someone who is an interesting character that you follow throughout the story of the Lord of the Rings over a three movie period. And what I think is interesting,
though.
But
he has a history, let me make my point.
He
has character flaws.
He is incredibly skilled, and he never loses a fight.
That's true.
However, he does have a struggle. He has a struggle about the woman that he loves, and the struggle about he doesn't believe he's worthy of being king. So for me, I think that what they're doing with Rey in the movies is trying to make her struggle more internal rather than external.
I haven't
but
seen
I think
that at
that
all,
the
though.
problem, well, like in the last movie, she has a struggle about who she is.
Yes, but what does that equate to?
My point, I agree with the fact that the movies have not handled that appropriately, but I don't think that you have to externalize the character's struggle in order for them to be interesting. You can internalize it, like Aragorn's struggle is primarily internalized, but you have to be able to show that. You show that through his interactions with the woman he loves, through his interactions with his friends. Like for me, one of my favorite scenes in the series is when Elrond brings the reforged sword back to him and basically says, "It's time for you to be king."
Yeah.
So I think
that's why it's so satisfying when he faces down like the.
That's
the
why
army.
I don't like the term Mary Sue. Mary Sue is attacking one specific aspect of Rey's character, but it doesn't actually deal with the central issue, which is it's not that she's perfect and doesn't have any flaws. It's that they haven't appropriately dealt with her own struggle, which is she struggles with her own identity. Who am I? Who brought me into this world? What am I meant to do? That is her primary struggle in the movie, but it is not tackled in a way that communicates it effectively to the audience.
But here's the thing, that has no play in the story. Her struggle internally just doesn't really play into the story. It's almost separate.
I agree.
It never stops her from doing anything. Like,
Yes,
it's never a
it's
problem.
not a
It's just
flaw,
something
it's
that she's
just
like,
there.
"Hey, I don't really know who I am," and then she's like, "I'm gonna go kill these guards now," and it's like, oh.
She has no struggle, and I agree. You don't have to have a physical struggle, but the mental struggle has to be based on like a character flaw or something that's important, something that's hard to overcome. And instead, she doesn't really have a trial. She doesn't have any tribulation. She's just kind of awesome, and that's it. I don't really see any place for her to go, any place for her to grow.
Why the hell
I've said my piece. I think that Mary Sue is a poor term when it comes to film criticism, and I think it shouldn't be in the conversation.
I don't like the term, but I'd like it. A lot of the arguments that are brought up on the Mary Sue conversation are valid for me.
I've seen a lot of great videos on it.
There's great videos which dissect it. I'm
stuff.
like, it has, despite what Daisy really says, it has nothing to do with gender. It applies to men as well. It's just, it is basically someone who does not
Mary
run.
Sue makes it about women. That's my problem.
It's not
No.
true. No, that's
Mary Sue is the female variant of that term.
But we're making it about gender at that point.
No,
like
we're
the
not.
problem that I have with
No,
the
we're
term
not. That
Mary
is
Sue
just
is
the
the term
variant.
Mary Sue in the conversation is almost always, it's not about gender. It is. Within the very term is specifically genderizing the criticism.
No.
That's the issue I have with it. If we're going to criticize a character like Rey, criticize her as a character, leave the gender part out of it because it really doesn't have anything to do with the conversation in the first place.
All right,
Then just call her a Gary Stu.
Gavin, please stop. It has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with who, like, how they interact with the world. Like, basically, there's like criteria. They're like overly skilled at things that like don't have much explanation backing her. Like, okay, how about this? Nothing with the Force. Everything can be explained with the Force. How does she do that? It's like she has the Force. She has that.
Mm-hmm.
How when she's on Jakku, how does she understand BB-8 and Chewbacca inexplicably? Like, those are two explanations.
Are you asking me a question?
Yes.
Yes, those are two questions which I have, which I'm like, these are skills. Which it doesn't really make any sense why she would know that. It's very clearly
Why does
established.
Luke understand R2?
He doesn't in the first film.
He doesn't?
No.
Not in the first film. I think he does later on. He's like he needs to have the message translated.
Inside the second film, he needs the translator.
C-3PO bounces him
C-3PO
off, and then I think he uses
I
it
don't
on
think
the
anyone
monitor.
actually
and
does
then
understand.
He has it on. Yeah.
R2D2.
No, there definitely are conversations. I think where they talk like because
No, I don't think so.
I think C-3PO
he
always
talks
needs
to
to
R2.
translate.
He talks to R2 in the Last Jedi, right?
Yes, but what does he actually? He doesn't have a conversation. All that can be gained.
No,
is what
he does. He
moves.
says watch your language. I think by that time he's probably learned how to speak to him.
I
but-
think for me, like For me, the answer
Listen,
to that
I'm not
question
trying to
is-
stonewall you. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that those are the types of questions which apply to the argument people
But
say.
the questions
they
are
don't
about
make
a
much
character,
sense.
not about a gender.
Yes,
They're not.
That's my point. So I think that the
Well,
term
those are the-
Mary Sue is it's a misleading term that shouldn't be in the conversation because it's ultimately it immediately genderizes the conversation rather than focusing on the fact
If
that
I
it's
wouldn't
about
say
character.
that.
It's
For
about
me, I
character
would just
issues.
say it's
if I could
just
come up with any other name for it that would be happy, like then that's
Soup.
fine. I
Like,
wouldn't prefer
call-
if that would
call her
be
soup
slapped on
for
the
How
all
about
chest.
I care.
an unencumbered protagonist? A
Yes.
protagonist that is not struggling actively against themselves or someone else.
Whatever term you want to call it. In all honesty, when I
just
see
think
the term
that-
Mary Sue, I just see just a snappy term that defines her. I don't
That's
see
what I
like
don't
a-
like about it. It's for me, the language of film criticism is important, and I think that's a very poor term that is often misused by people who really aren't acting in good faith in the conversation. They're trying to say that she sucks as a character, and here's the word I'm going to hide behind. That's the reason I'm not happy with it. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm saying that's what you're saying. My problem is with the term. I don't disagree with the criticism behind the term, but I think let's use real words that actually express the ideas better than simply using
I can agree. I can
essentially
agree
using
with
something that
that.
seems just invented to catch headlines.
I can agree with that. In all honesty, again, there are a lot of great videos that I've seen on the topic, but I guess it's just a term.
The term is very childish. It doesn't really do much
Yeah.
of anything. That's what I say. I agree with the criticisms that relate to the term, but I don't really side with what people say about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, my computer had a brain aneurysm. I don't know what the hell happened. So we were on Ray, and she was flipping over
a TIE
Kylo's
fighter.
TIE fighter.
Yeah.
Which by the way, those are his gloves very much.
that's his
Just from an
Typewriter.
imagery standpoint, I do love the fact that you get this like Western showdown.
Oh yeah,
in the first-
there's a lot. Again,
Cool imagery.
we've talked about the imagery. That's something which
Yeah.
is cool. Yeah, this
Imagery's
is
cool, but the context.
Abrams I think handles that really well. Like,
yeah.
setting up shots that they clearly had thought a lot about.
So we got a little bit of a Gamora versus like Nebula type thing where she's flipping over. I don't know if she's gonna like slice him in half when he cuts back.
It's
through.
cool imagery, but the
You
context.
see that planet right there? Is that the planet from Rogue One?
It looks like
The
it.
one
like
that
it.
the one that the Imperial base was on. I saw that. It was like that looks like the same planet. I don't
Could
know
be.
if it is.
It could not be though.
Kylo is screwing people
screwing
up,
that
like
guy.
yeah. So we got a little bit of like a Logan showdown with Kylo, who is not wearing his mask, and then next shot his mask is
Piecing it
mended.
back together.
Finally.
This was all over online. Everyone was theorizing this. This was a leak. It's fully true. There's like ruby lining across his helmet. He's there. I'm like, yeah. So,
Nice.
Talk about a
That's pretty
retcon.
neat.
so yeah, he fixed that thing up. He's like, oh, you know,
I prefer
like,
that.
Like it's like the smoldering heap at the end of the Last Jedi. He's like, you know what? I think I gotta fix this. I'm like, did you guys throw it away? They're like, yeah, we put it in the trash
I
can, buddy.
prefer
I can
that.
just imagine
You know,
like
I
a
will say I
stormtrooper
prefer
sweeping
that.
it up.
I prefer that he actually has to like
Fix
repair
it.
the old mask rather than just make a brand new mask.
Yeah.
Like it'll at least look distinct on screen.
Yeah. So it
My
looks,
man.
Yeah. And
Billy
Lando-
Williams.
Yay!
That's pretty sweet.
The saga comes to an end.
So
maybe.
this is something very interesting. You got a lot of people like all
So
together.
do
like
we
Finn-
assume that we're on Tatooine? Do we assume we're on Jakku? Do we assume we're somewhere else?
I assume we're
there's
just somewhere
mountains
else.
like there's no mountains like that on Tatooine. I don't
so
Yeah.
think,
probably
so-
Jakku.
Wait, no, there are mountains like that.
Well, yeah,
There's
there
that when
were.
R2's going in,
What,
and when
what am I thinking? Of course there are. Like
Right.
it could be either. They're essentially interchangeable.
it doesn't matter. They're on a planet.
They're on-
Yeah, they're on
So-
a desert planet. C-3PO's there. C-3PO's in the middle of the action, which is rare.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Leia has a patch thing.
I was looking at that. I couldn't tell
I
what
don't
that was. That's
recognize
not
it.
the rebel symbol, right?
That's not the rebel symbol.
It's a shield insignia. I swear, like they're
shield
not going to
insignia.
do that. And you got Leia. I guarantee that's CGI. I'm sorry, man.
Can you
if
go
it's
back
CGI,
real
I
quick?
really don't care.
It doesn't look like it. Maybe? I can't tell.
Whatever they're gonna do with Leia, it's not gonna be enough. I don't know what they're gonna do, but it's just, You should have just killed her, man. You should have re-edited the film. You should have had her sucked out of the airlock and given a disgraceful death.
Back in.
But it doesn't matter. I'm like,
I
why?
do hope that they give her a fitting end, though. Like even if she doesn't die, like I don't know, like she can walk off into the sunset. Have a moment where it's a farewell to Carrie Fisher, like something like that.
So we got the whole gang.
I
in this
do love the
different droid.
I do love the composition. That's pretty sweet.
We got a forky droid now. Like we can go into that later on.
Can I say I'm happy that Poe's actually part of the group?
Yeah,
like, he's kind of been separate from the action, so it's nice that we're gonna get all those characters.
Is it just
together.
me or does Rey's costume look whiter?
It looks a little bit.
I'm sorry.
I think it looks more Jedi now in this movie.
Yeah.
Why have
than
they
it has
stuck
been.
to that same costume through all of these movies? She looks the same. Look at that. Poe and Finn, they look different. Like Finn's got a new haircut. He's like, why couldn't you have given her a robe or something? Why does she always?
Yeah, it's a nit.
You don't want her to be labeled as Mary Sue. Then why is she always wearing the sleeveless shirts with cleavage hanging out and wearing like the tight lipstick haircut?
That's not cleavage.
Whatever.
Okay.
I don't know. I just.
It's a nitpick.
You guys are not fun.
It's
to
a
film,
nitpick. Hold on.
To film teaser
Something that
reviews
I
with.
would
We're watching a Star Wars teaser, and all you can talk about are the costumes.
I'm just bringing up stuff.
Something that I would like to note as this.
Check it out though. C-3PO doesn't have a red arm.
He
Well,
didn't have a red arm in The Last Jedi.
Oh, he didn't?
A lot of people brought it up as a
it was
continuity
also
error.
fixed in Force Awakens.
It's a lot of people were like, "That's a continuity error."
Oh.
He literally doesn't have it inexplicably at the end of The Force Awakens. So it's like,
switched it
okay.
somehow.
I don't know.
Something that I
Doesn't
would
matter.
like to note out is the first two movies took place basically in the same day, so it makes
Yeah,
sense that
I
she has
don't-
the same.
Is there a
Every-
time jump in this
costume-ish.
movie? Do we know?
a year time skip, at least it's believed. So
Okay.
Stuff has happened, I guess.
Chewie's doing something, maybe.
And you got this shot. So this is kind of the shot of the
So
film.
Check that out.
So is that from?
The first Death Star.
What was
or
the, is that
second?
the where the laser?
That looks like
That's
that
the
looks like the old Death Star where the laser bit would come from.
In all honesty, I think that's the first one.
So is that on Endor? Maybe?
I don't think it would be.
Doesn't look like Endor. I'm pretty sure that
There's only two Death Stars, so you either have the first Death Star, and we're assuming
And it's
this is a
either
bit
on,
that fell on
like a
Yavin 4.
Well,
or
it could
it's-
either be
or it's
Yavin
on-
4 or like
or
one
it's
of the
on
other
Endor.
Yavins, one of the other moons of Yavin, or just Yavin itself, or just
I don't think Yavin itself, because Yavin's,
Or
like
just
Yavin's a gas giant.
blasted into some different system or something.
I think
don't know
it
why
would
they'd
make-
be going back to the Death Star.
Well,
Maybe this is
The
where
reason I
Palpatine's
think it's
living.
the second one is you have this shot and then immediately Palpatine laughs. So Palpatine is much more associated with the Death Star too, since that's the Death Star he died on.
And
Do we think he's showing up? Like
Yeah.
the
He might
novels
be.
where he was
So-
a Force
so-
ghost and like took over a clone body?
So the last thing, which is just kind of the moment of there, is like they don't use the like Force theme. They use like Kylo's theme for the ending.
Oh,
of
really?
this. Yeah. Did you hear that?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Let me play it again.
Oh, you're right. So let's talk title. Are we assuming this is referring to Kylo specifically because they're using that music? Because he is
Not
the last
necessarily.
remaining Skywalker alive, right?
Unless.
Rey.
Unless they're gonna retcon that. Unless they're gonna imply that Kylo is either BSing or lying outright
In
about.
that scene,
about
it seems
Rey's
a lot
parents.
like he's lying.
Could
He's
be.
just the way it's.
I honestly
What,
don't
your
want to make any
parents, they were nothing,
theories
screw
because
you.
like that worked out so good last time. But it means something. It means they're probably gonna want to do something with like Luke, or I don't know. They could do it with anybody.
It would make sense for me to be Kylo because Rey has already kind of overcome that brush with dark side temptation. Like, if anyone's going to kind of like rise from a low point, it would be Kylo at this point. Like, can we
Yeah.
agree on that? Like,
Kylo is the most
seems-
interesting character right now, and
And I'm kind of sad about that because I mean, you could.
I'm sorry if
If he
he
gets
gets
some
if he gets
I
redeemed,
don't want him to
he'll
be
have one of the
redeemed.
most bizarre like arcs of all time. Like I
In
honestly.
and out and in and out and in and out. Gee whiz.
He's such a great character, but I swear, like, The Last Jedi just took him in this random area. Like, for me, he shouldn't have been conflicted anymore after he killed Han. By the way, spoilers for the entire OT and everything and like that. Yeah, Han dies, like he murders him. Okay,
Luke dies,
he should have been
Han
evil.
dies.
Like he should have been like a freaking monster after that. But like he's
I don't
still...
like that idea. I like the fact that that's Rey's assertion. Rey's assertion is you're a monster and you're a bad guy, and he's like, I'm a real person.
Subvert your expectations.
Like I like the fact that they treat him like a real human being. They don't undercut his monstrous actions. He challenges Rey that I'm not just this blind monster that you wanna slap a label on.
But that could be interesting, considering that we've already had the conflict in Darth Vader. Wouldn't it be nice to like finally have a resolved villain?
Well, if he comes back to a full good guy, I just feel it would be strange because he murdered everybody.
Han.
It's like
I don't imagine we're gonna have a final shot of this movie where they're all hanging around Tatooine drinking stuff together.
Drinking blue milk.
I don't think.
I imagine that if any resolution is going to come where he has a positive ending, it will probably be similar to Vader's ending, where ultimately nobody really knows except for Luke. I don't know, because that's one thing that I've always...
He shows up at the end. Or
that's one thing I've always been curious about in the new movies, like how much do people know about Darth Vader? Essentially, we can assume that Han, Luke, Leia all know that Vader redeemed himself at the end. But nobody else, from what we can see and what has been shown in the movies, really indicates that it's widely known that Vader ended up killing the Emperor and ended up redeeming himself at the end. So it could be like a small-scale redemption where only a handful of characters know.
Could be. So
I don't know. That last bit, though, I'm not sure if that's from Return of the Jedi, that laugh, or if that's new.
Well, the only part
be
where I
new.
could think is where after they say the Death Star is complete, and then he has his laugh.
Everything is everything is proceeding as I have foreseen, and he has that laugh. Yeah, it could
can
be
we
that.
compare them? Can we compare those laughs side by side?
he laughs a...
I would not be against Ian McDermott showing back up.
Here's
I
what
like
I
him.
think.
He's
Okay, you
a good
got
actor.
two cheap answers. Like we brushed on this before, but the world building of The Force Awakens is just broken. Like literally
By The Last Jedi, absolutely.
No, by itself. Like inside of The Force Awakens, what you literally have is you have
Oh yeah, we've talked about this before.
yeah, you have like the First Order just showing up out of nowhere. Where did they get
Like,
their money?
we're
have they
the
been
Republic.
How have they been stealing like children and mass producing them into stormtroopers for like 30 years without the Republic
Right.
knowing? There's all these things that don't make any sense.
How's the Republic not stop this
There's no
crap?
clear sense of history.
Yeah,
Yes.
Like
exactly.
what has happened since Return of the Jedi that has led to now.
Yeah.
And
it
which could
all-
be fine inside of a solo film, but this is a sequel. We need some answers.
And all of it revolves around Snoke. Snoke is the
Yes.
center of the
Right.
First Order. He's like, it's just...
like, where did this guy come from?
where was he in the OT? Where is all that? And then it gets cut in half, and everyone's like, "Who cared who Snoke was?" I'm like, the people who cared about the world building.
The only thing that
Snoke
we really
sucked. He
know,
sucks as a
yeah.
character, but he was important
He
to the
could
story.
provide a
He
lot
was
of
the
answers.
only person who actually they actually addressed a sense of history with him.
Yeah.
Like you get to understand that he was the person that led Kylo to murder Luke's students and end up kind of becoming this villain. But beyond that, you don't really know. Like for me, the biggest thing that I was always curious about was what was Leia doing, what was Han doing. Like I think the one thing they maybe address a little bit is after Kylo killed all of Luke's students, there's this idea that that's when Leia and Han had a falling out. Han went back to smuggling. Leia went back to strictly doing politics. But we don't really know what happened prior to that with them. So
All right, you got two really good solutions. Where did Rey get all of her powers? She's Palpatine's daughter. And who was Snoke? He was a reincarnation.
we're talking that.
He was, and Snoke. Where was Snoke? He was a reincarnation of Palpatine. Like he rose again. He was there. Huh. That's how he got all of his power. That's why we didn't hear about him in the OT. And then he gets cut in half, and he comes back in this movie somehow.
Two cheap answers, but they explain a lot.
I could be down with that.
Cheap, dumb. Could have good explanation.
And something that I like with the whole Palpatine idea.
That would explain her sheer, like, to put it in a crass way, her sheer metachlorian count allowed her to be as powerful as she is.
It would plug up some of the holes in the sinking ship, and maybe it could make it to
one
Harvard.
thing that I think could be interesting with that,
cool.
like you could get a conflict
I wouldn't
between.
Be fully against
we
that.
could finally get a conflict where Rey. We could finally get a conflict where Rey.
Okay, so.
Everything is proceeding as I had foreseen.
Maybe if they sped that up a bit, it might match.
Go back to the original.
Not quite.
Not quite.
In all honesty, it doesn't matter. It's his laugh.
It goes up. It goes up too quick in the new one versus the old one. It kind of is a slower build.
And it sounds.
But it's 100%
It sounds
Ian McDiarmid.
deeper. It sounds older. I think that's
100%
probably new footage. So it could provide if she was Palpatine's daughter, that could provide like a nice struggle. Like she's wondering like, how am I gonna face with this? She closed her mouth. Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Like the good, like what that actually, I'm not against that because what do you have then? You have the daughter of the Emperor as your hero fighting the last Skywalker.
And that's
a cool idea.
That's pretty neat.
And that is what can bring up a lot of and that's what can bring up,
because then that actually gives you a theme.
And it gives you conflict that you can have too. Like,
yeah.
She realizes, holy crap, my dad is this monster. Like irredeemable, like
even more
evil.
monster than even more monster than Darth Vader.
Exactly. Someone who like probably could never come back, and like that it'd be like learning that you were like related to Hitler.
Do you remember we watched Schindler's List?
Yes.
I found a documentary. I haven't watched it yet, but I read an article about it, about the woman who discovered that she was the daughter of the character in that movie, who's actually based on a real person. Amon Goeth. She found out that she was his daughter, and I think she wrote a book that said something like, I think the title was "My Dad Would Have Had Me Shot," because she's actually African American. Like she has she's a woman of color, and so she was basically having to come to terms with the fact that her dad was a monster. Her dad was someone who murdered countless thousands of people, and like that'd be an interesting idea. Like someone like Rey who has much more a rosy view of the world, discovering that she's the daughter of an extremely horrible person that made the galaxy suffer.
It's an interesting idea, and you need, if that was true, which we're just speculating at this point, you definitely need to execute it in a very good way.
See, this is what we were talking about. You were saying like, well, all that she has is like, hey, who am I? And like none of the movies have answered that because what are films but mystery boxes?
What are stories but mystery boxes?
The only thing the closest you get to it is that moment when she goes into the cave in The Last Jedi. But instead of having a moment of
it's a subversion of expectations. Like,
you expect her to see Kylo, you expect her to see someone, but essentially all you see is herself, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, but visually it doesn't give you any new information.
Yeah.
You have to the discovery of that scene only really pays off when she's having that conversation after the duel.
It's kind of like
Snoke's throne.
Ryan opened up the mystery box and there was just nothing inside.
I don't think Ryan is using mystery boxes. Abrams uses mystery boxes.
He doesn't use the mystery box, but he brought the one that he was holding up and just
what?
There's nothing inside.
Are you comparing?
Little bit of continuity. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the ignition of the lightsaber, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Her thumb is on there, like as if she's igniting it. Huge nitpick, doesn't have anything to do with anything. I'm just laughing at that. I was like,
well, we're assuming that this part was destroyed, right? So this thing may not be there anymore.
For one,
Could be.
is that
Yeah.
even the ignition of the lightsaber?
I don't know.
Is it ever
I don't know if
said?
they actually have ever talked about. Whether
I
that is or
don't
not.
know enough about that stuff to do. I think it's in there.
Does anyone in the?
Who cares?
Does anyone actually know this?
Now, how do you like them apples?
Does anyone know if that's the?
This is just a small thing, but I kind of like the fact that Rey
that
still
the
carries a
ignition?
gun.
I think it's cool too. I
Like,
laugh.
like there's no Jedi I can think of who carries a gun like
Luke.
like
Luke did.
Obi-Wan
for a while,
never
but
liked him. Obi-Wan never liked him. Luke did a little bit, but I
Luke
like the
kept
fact
him at
that
the end of the.
Rey's not just clicking into kind of like old way of being a Jedi. Like honestly, Rey is for me what I imagined Luke would be like as he got older. Like very much a looser
Free
looser Jedi. Like
Yeah.
someone that like especially in the novels.
Tully got obsessed with reading the books, man, and then he's like, "Holy crap, man,
Right.
this is not good."
Yeah, it's,
So-
I don't know. It's interesting.
Honestly,
I'll admit
Palpatine.
I'm excited.
Honestly, Palpatine can fix things, but it also can raise a lot more questions.
Yes.
It could be damning, especially when they keep saying this is supposed to be the definitive end of the Skywalker saga. I don't
It could
know.
conflict with the themes we've had so far, which is about letting the past die and building a new future.
It could be.
Where essentially this is implying that we're going to be looking back on the legacy of what has come and perhaps facing an old adversary.
Something that's not in there. Disney has still never gone out and confirmed or denied if that post that it was released was real. I'm left to assume it was probably
The one
fake,
that was
but-
the one that people were talking about, the Red Stormtroopers.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is.
Nothing
with that.
about that looked real to me, to be honest.
If it was made by someone, that looked damn good. And I'm like, but yeah, the no Knights of Ren in this either.
And no title. That for me was a big thing. Like, if this is
Yes.
a real poster, where's the title?
Exactly.
Why would it just say Star Wars Episode 9? Or is it 9?
It just said Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that was for me the biggest like, I don't think this is real.
But something that's a real point, Rose, there were no Knights of Ren in this trailer either. So very
And that was
interesting.
something that was on the poster, so yeah.
It's kind of. I mean, I
At
like
this
the
point,
idea.
at
of
this
the
point,
Knights
is
of
there
Ren.
anything that could really be gained by having the Knights of Ren in the movie?
You could have
new
an
conflict
interesting
with
conflict.
Kylo, because Kylo is
Maybe.
just going to be by himself, and it's not going to make for a very interesting story.
Yeah, it's just him
Also-
and what's his name?
Hux.
I'm not sure if they're gonna do this. I'm not sure if they're not gonna do this. But if we do remember from the Starkiller base, like when that laser beam came out,
It looks a little bit
looked
like
the
that with the red, yeah.
like the red washed over all the trees and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's possible that this is on Baby Starkiller
Guys,
2.
that's another one of those
I don't
stupid
know.
criticisms where we're like, there's too many Death Stars, and I'm like, guys, if
It doesn't
it's
matter that it's a Death
effectively
Star,
used,
if
it's
it's a-
good.
it's just-
Yeah.
Like, why
depends
do
on
people hate
execution.
Starkiller Base? Because how the hell did they build the damn to hell thing in
mean,
like
the
30
nose-
years? Like, it's like,
You know what's
if
funny
you take a
though?
look at that thing, the sheer amount of like dirt and that would need to be moved, like the excavation process, like it's so silly when you think about it. Like that's why Starkiller Base
They
doesn't
use
work.
laser beams.
And it's barely in the movie. It barely plays
Yeah.
a part. It just destroys the Republic casually.
It's
so
a plot device to keep the plot moving forward.
yeah, if it can be used effectively, a Death Star, another Death Star can be used in
Yeah,
this. So
I do
OT
admit it was funny. I read an article recently that talked about how people who made the Return of the Jedi felt about it, and for the most part, they're all like, probably was the weaker one. I love the Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi is
That
cool,
might
yeah.
be my
That's great.
favorite Star Wars movie. I absolutely agree with most
Pacing
of the
issues.
criticism towards it. Pacing, the Ewoks, the fact that we have another Death Star.
yeah, if we ever do a
like,
review, I'd love to talk about Ewoks.
I
Have a serious
love,
discussion about it.
but I love that movie. That is like, if you were asking me,
It's got the payoffs.
do you want to
Yes.
watch a Star Wars movie? I'm like, yes, let's watch Return of the Jedi. That's the one that I think I
Exactly.
watched the most as a kid. It's the one I enjoyed the most. It, for me, is just a really fun movie to watch.
I would say Empire Strikes Back is the most well-made.
I would
like,
agree.
The best.
We're talking
the
best.
actual best.
I don't think anyone's
My
going to discount
favorite
that
is
one.
absolutely Return of the Jedi because it's just
It's
it's
fun.
so cool.
It has
So
some of my
fun.
favorite scenes in Star Wars. All the stuff on the Death Star with Luke, Vader, and the Emperor. I actually like discounting the fact that yes, it probably should have been the Wookiees. I don't actually mind the Ewoks that much. Like when they show
I
up
don't
and do all their Swiss Family Robinson stuff to fight the stormtroopers.
Yeah,
Like that's fun.
If we review the OT before that, we should definitely have a full discussion because I genuinely want to talk about like how they are like
I
in their
always hate
movies.
the criticism like why are the rocks like by like killing
Yeah,
like
people-
stormtroopers like
we'll get into
okay if a big rock
Kevin,
jumps on your head I don't care if you have a
Kevin,
helmet your toes
Even if you're in
Kevin,
armor, you're still going to get knocked to the ground. And let's not forget when the Ewoks first showed up, they were going to kill and eat the cast.
Yeah.
Like they weren't just like pleasant Teletubbies from the beginning. They are fierce like warriors who were like, "What are you doing on our planet?"
Yeah, we will definitely have a discussion about Ewoks if we go there.
Oh
So-
yeah, we need to watch Return of the Jedi.
let's review that before this movie comes out. But honestly, okay, so the ultimate thoughts. We have a lot that we have to say here, but
I'm excited. I didn't expect to be excited about another Star Wars movie, but the trailer's gotten me interested.
I'm optimistic. I think that there's a lot that you could do, but I feel they need to understand that there's stuff that needs to be fixed.
Please don't kill Billy D. Williams. You've killed enough of the original cast after one movie. Stop killing characters who are old and I love them.
and it doesn't matter that
Please
you kill
keep
them.
Billy D. Williams around. Let him
Don't
and Chewbacca
kill-
go on many
don't-
adventures in the
don't
Millennium
literally
Falcon.
kill them
which,
for
by the
no
way-
reason.
by the
There's
way,
no
I think that
payoff.
it's-
There's no nothing. Don't kill them off at their low point.
By
Like
the way-
they've died sad, pathetic losers.
By the way, that's
How dare you?
By the way, that's something which I think could be done really well because, like, Chewbacca was basically like for nothing instead of the Last Jedi. He was just
Yeah.
eating porgs.
He was just
It
there.
was really disappointing. I think that's something you could do. He could be like, "Hey, man," and then he's like, "Han died." He's like, "Damn!" Like, and they could reconcile, and then they could have adventures together. That could be really cool. Yeah, you could have good closure for Chewbacca because he was just.
And think about this, like for me, one of the things that I really was disappointed by is there was never a moment where all the old characters were in a room together.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite moments of The Last Jedi was because you had a moment where Luke and Leia had a moment together. And I was like, I've been needing this. I've been needing
It was
these
small,
characters
you
to
know,
have a moment together. Like, Han never got to see Luke again. Luke never got to see Han again. Like strangely, it feels
We never
like
got
the
to see
movies
Luke
separated
more
these
than
characters. And yeah, so I'm happy the idea that two characters from the old movies are going to be able to go on adventures together. We get Chewie and we get Chewie and Lando back in the Millennium Falcon again. Like that's neat. We haven't seen that since Empire.
Yeah.
I like that.
So-
Billy D. Williams looks like he's doing some good acting too.
Yeah, like they
Where has he been? I've seen him in Star Wars and
The Lego
Batman.
Batman.
Yeah.
That's it, and Lego Batman. Like I don't think I've seen him in anything else except for
What,
like
he had like
cologne
7
commercials.
lines in there?
Barely in it. Yeah, it was
He
just
like
cool.
probably
Did he
walked
just
in
stop
one
acting,
day
or
to
was I not
stop.
seeing the movies he was in?
I just think he walked off with all the bank from the Star Wars movies.
I don't
He just
blame him for that.
I think he's just been.
down,
I think he's just
had
been
a-
low key. I don't think he was ever someone who wanted to pursue. But yeah.
All right, that's fun. I'm
Yeah.
happy he's back. Good for him.
Okay, so in all honesty, like we're probably gonna have to trim this down because Mercy, we've been talking for too long. But yeah, like
How long have we been talking? Good night, like an hour.
Look at the
Yeah.
time.
Okay, so like ultimate thoughts, like you're excited. You're excited. I'm optimistic. I think they need to understand that there's stuff which needs to be fixed about the world because if you don't do that, it's going to be troublesome. It's going to be just like Lost and a lot of the complaints people have in there with like the world being kind of broken. Even though that series for me is like strong. Like you need to answer questions on like it's with every TV show. I remember watching Breaking Bad. There was this looming question at the back of my head. Like after season 2, there was something which is big, which has happened. I'm like, are they going to conclude that? Because it like goes on for many seasons. I'm like,
Right.
They kind of need to come back to this because this is important. It lays it, and then like towards the end they answer it. I was like, it's so well executed how they answer that question. When it ends, you're like, the show ends so perfectly. There's like nothing. Like, why didn't they conclude that arc? Like, they need to do that with this. They need to make sure that the world is fixed.
They need to
They have a
create a
tough job.
satisfying ending. Like I think
definitely
that
do.
The Last Jedi was an experiment in some ways of not providing satisfying answers, but instead trying to provide new answers, and that worked well for some people. It didn't work well for some other people. I
Yes.
think that regardless of how you felt about the last movie or even the movie before that, this movie is going to somewhat do course corrections in order to, because it's the last movie in a trilogy, and you want the last movie in a trilogy to feel satisfying, to feel conclusive. So that ultimately, I think, is probably something they're going to attempt. Is
I just
let's bring
noticed-
this all to a close. Let's bring closure to these movies that we've seen beforehand.
I just noticed that there's a lens flare.
Whatever. Okay, so Gavin,
Alright.
your thoughts finally? Just
I don't know.
you're not looking.
They have a really tough job lit up for them.
No, I don't think anyone's gonna deny that.
I like the trailer. The trailer's fine. There are certain things I don't like about it, like Rey jumping over TIE fighters. But other than that,
Good work.
I have some hope, I guess. I'm just really pessimistic considering that what the job they have let out for them. I'd be really surprised if they're able to tie it in together because they have a hell of a job that they need to complete, and it seems intimidating to me. It probably seems intimidating to them.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm just kind of in the back of my mind like maybe, but in all honesty, realistically, I'm thinking about this like probably not.
All right, yeah. So in the end, decent enough for what we have to do. But yeah, yeah. Thank you guys for watching our very long discussion. As you can see, it'll probably be nice to go back and review some of the original trilogy. Maybe if we can even review them all before the new one comes out, or have like a discussion. Yeah, it'd be cool to rewatch them and like get a layout for there. But there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Star Wars. But yeah, like this trailer, decent. It could make for an interesting movie. So, all right, let us know what you guys thought about the trailer in the comments below, and we'll be coming back for more movie reviews and podcasts real soon. So, see you guys.
See ya.
See ya.